Hi y'all, welcome back to He Then, Free Then. Today we're going to be watching Introduction to Sexual Symbolism with husband material.
Hey, my name is Drew Boa. I'm the founder of Husband Material, where I help men outgrow porn. Today, we are talking about sexual symbolism because the more you understand what is symbolized by the certain things that you find sexually attractive or irresistible, the less power those things will have over you. This is a huge part of outgrowing porn. We've done a number of episodes on this, so I would recommend going down to the description and the show notes and looking at some of the other episodes we've done on sexual fantasies and attractions and fetishes. Today I'm talking about symbolism.
Well, I am curious before we begin. Where are you getting your information? You have sources in the description? There are no sources in the description.
In other words, what does a certain sexual body part or activity symbolize? And while there are endless varieties of what we find sexually attractive, there are certain patterns and symbols that tend to mean more or less the same thing
According to what data?
among various different people. I have heard hundreds of varieties of sexual fantasies and attractions and fetishes. And I've told my story about my sexual fetish for braces and what that symbolized to me and what that promised to my heart. Today, I'm going to talk about 7 different sexual symbols and what they usually mean.
Again, I understand that you've heard, quote unquote, hundreds of sexual stories, but did you do a scientific study? Did you follow research methods? Was this published, peer-reviewed, or is this just a very large collection of anecdotes?
I'm going to suggest the story and the explanation behind each one of these because it would be intellectually dishonest and ultimately unhelpful for me to assume that each one of these symbols means the same thing to everybody.
Hey, at least he's being honest that this isn't like scientifically backed research, but just his own experience. I appreciate that.
At Husband Material, we believe in the power of curiosity and compassion, and that means having a posture of openness and always learning.
As long as that fits within your definition of rebranded purity culture, you have openness.
And also compassion of not condemning these things, but rather seeking to understand them, accept the beauty and goodness within them, while letting go of what's harmful. So, here are the 7 symbols we will talk about today: the penis, breasts, kissing, oral sex, nudity, diapers, and feet.
Look at this spicy list.
Let's start with the penis. Being extremely aroused by the penis, whether your own or someone else's, is super common, and it's often
Because you're gay.
symbolizing masculinity. The penis and testicles are the part of the male body which is unique to men, it's lacking in women.
Unless, of course, you're a trans woman. Then you're a woman with a penis. But I'm not entirely surprised that Drew decided to leave that out.
And so, in a way, the most male thing about us. And I often find while talking with men who are extremely sexually activated by penises that it symbolizes a kind of masculinity that they believe they don't have, or that they wish they had, or that they never received from their dad. The penis can be a symbol of fatherhood and that masculinity being transferred to you, or you being initiated into it and connecting with it. I mean, as a boy, I think it's very normal to want to know what dad's body looks like, and specifically his penis and his testicles. And so the penis can often symbolize a masculine connection, a fathering relationship that you never had, or that you lost, or that you've always longed for.
Get me wrong. There is a thing where straight men have a penis fetish. It's a thing. But also, like, you could just be gay, and that's fine if you're really attracted to penises.
And remember, this is just one explanation. And I think it's important to note that the penis is an inherently interesting, arousing part of the body that is often featured in porn because it's beautiful and vulnerable, and God made it that way. And if you want to hear more about the unique aspects of the penis, go listen to our episode on the theology of the penis.
You're just gonna drop that you did a whole episode on the theology of the penis? Dude, I gotta watch that next.
Let's move on to number 2, breasts. As a teenager, I was
Boobies.
often turned on by big breasts, and now as an adult, I can understand more of what that symbolized for me.
Um, I think that just symbolizes being a normal straight teenage boy. I mean, certainly not every teenage boy likes big boobs, but a lot of them do.
And the many men who I work with who say that they have a thing for boobs. Breasts often symbolize nurture and abundance. When we were little babies, the breasts of a woman provided nourishment physically and nurture emotionally. In our biology, seeing a woman with large breasts communicates that she is able to nourish, she is able to nurture. And so, if you grew up in an environment,
Okay, let me pause right there because yes, it's absolutely true that people in general, people who are attracted to women, are wired to be attracted to big boobs because they symbolize that you would be able to provide nourishment for a baby. But that doesn't necessarily mean they symbolize abundance in that way. I guess it's a little bit pedantic, but I just feel like you're trying to explain it away as if you understand this, the spell will be broken. But no, you're still going to be attracted to big boobs because that's the way you're wired. I don't know.
where there wasn't a lot of comfort, there wasn't a lot of emotional intimacy, especially with mom or with women, then breasts might be an especially powerful sexual symbol for you. I also find that breasts can symbolize abundance in the sense that, hey, there is enough to provide for you. And sometimes men who have experienced poverty, either financially or relationally,
You heard it here. Poor men like boobs. Poor men like big boobies. That is Drew's ultimate conclusion here.
see breasts and it symbolizes that abundance, that sense of, oh, there's going to be enough for me. There will not be a lack. There is no scarcity here. These are just some of the storylines that can be underneath a strong sexual attraction to breasts. The third symbol I want to talk about is kissing, which often symbolizes an intimate, tender connection. Kissing is not as extreme as sexual intercourse, and yet, with faces touching, lips which are so tender coming together, there's something romantic about that. That is a deep symbol within our psyche. Think of
Just, I think that's thinking about it too deep. I think kissing is just an intimate act, and it's usually pretty tender. So we associate it with those emotions. I don't know if that's symbolism.
all of the movies where the kiss is the big moment. As a kid, I fantasized about my first kiss for years. I remember on my 13th birthday making a wish when I blew out the candles on my birthday cake and thinking, I wish this is the year of my first kiss. And then I made the same wish when I was 14, 15, 16, because kissing was such a powerful symbol for me of being accepted, connected, intimately intertwined with another person. And in that regard, kissing is really not as much about the physical act as much as it is about the emotional experience. that you're often aching for underneath that sexual urge. The
Mostly agree with that. Like kissing is a lot about the romantic aspect more than the sexual aspect, but like, I don't necessarily think we have to separate those two unless you want to.
The fourth symbol for us to explore is oral sex, either giving oral sex to someone else or receiving it from someone else. In the posture of receiving oral sex, you're usually above the other person, and so there is a power dynamic that is real and also symbolic, where you're above the other person and they're servicing you, and this is often a symbol of power. And this type of power over position can be a reversal if you felt powerless as a boy, helpless, trapped. I felt those things, and oral sex was a very strong symbol for me. It all
So, obviously, it done hopefully that could be a really good way for you to explore regaining your own power. If you and a consenting partner are both into it and they want to get you off that way, sounds like a good way for you to feel some power in your life. Go for it.
also, for me at least, symbolized tremendous amount of sexual pleasure without intercourse. And I think it's important to say that oral sex can also symbolize pleasure, maybe without the type of relational intimacy and connection that you would have in kissing. On the other hand, providing
Sure. Yeah, and again, if that's a way for you to feel free to have less intimate sex, as long as you're doing it with a consenting partner, that sounds like a good idea. Go back a little bit.
maybe without the type of relational intimacy and connection that you would have in kissing. On the other hand, providing oral sex for another person can symbolize being pleasing, being a delight, being received and enjoyed as a human being. It's something that we all want, to be desired, to be wanted. And giving someone else oral sex can symbolize that aspect of being received and being someone who makes another person smile and light up with.
I did not expect for Drew to come out with such a good advertisement for oral sex. You heard it here, man. This is a great way for you to feel like you're needed, you're wanted, you're desired, like you're pleasing someone else. Those are all really good desires. And if this act makes you feel that way, if that gives you that feeling, you're doing it with a consenting partner, go for it. That makes you feel like you are a good person, makes you feel like you're doing something good for somebody else, gives you all those happy chemicals. Sounds like a good reason to do it. It makes you feel in control, makes you feel powerful, makes you feel loved. Go for it. Thanks, Drew.
With pleasure. And I acknowledge there is complexity here. And there are all kinds of different storylines that can go along with this. For example, providing oral sex might be a reenactment of sexual abuse that you were forced or coerced to perform. It could also be a way of you feeling like, well, if I do this for the other person, then I will have them and they will have me. And I don't pretend to understand these things perfectly. That's why this.
Let me pause and acknowledge that really quick. Now, trauma play is a thing. A lot of people experience it. I would say if that's the case for you, obviously talk to a therapist, work out the issues, see where you're at. Trauma play, if you and a licensed psychologist agree that it's a healthy way for you to reclaim some memories, again, go for it. But obviously, I'm not in a place to tell you whether that's going to be healthy for you or not. So, talk to somebody. Now, for the second one, if it's something that you feel like you have to do in order to please the other person, like you mentioned, you should probably work on your relationship. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not a relationship coach. You've got to work that out between you and your partner. I personally think it's acceptable every so often to do something that's not your favorite because you love somebody and you want to do something nice for them. But if it's like an always thing or you feel uncomfortable with it, that's something where you need to have a conversation and set your own boundaries with your body. Anyway, I'm not saying he disagrees with me on this. I just wanted to make my point here.
This episode is so short, and at the same time, I've worked with hundreds of men, and these storylines are often coming to the surface when we look deeper into, okay, what is this symbolizing for you? What is it promising to your heart? The fifth symbol I want to talk about is nudity. Nudity, either in exhibitionism of wanting others to see your body, or also potentially in voyeurism of wanting to see someone else's naked body, it often symbolizes being seen and affirmed. In other words, the physical experience of being seen
Interesting.
in all of your parts can be symbolizing being seen as a person. It can point to this underlying longing for vulnerability, either for
If you feel this way and you have a consensual place to do voyeurism, such as maybe a nude beach, or if you are participating in like an orgy or something like that, group sex, and that makes you feel seen and affirmed and validated and powerful, as long as the parties are consenting, sounds like a good idea to me. But of course, don't slash people. Make sure there's consent. That's all. Goodbye.
someone else to be fully vulnerable with you and sharing all that they are with you, or for you to be totally vulnerable and accepted. And remember, these are just some of the storylines, and they're very common. And at the same time, there are other explanations too. For example, the exhibitionism that I did as a college student, exposing myself to all these different guys in my college dorm,
Yeah, me too.
actually came from a story where I was exposed and humiliated at summer camp. There was a huge hole in my crotch, and all the other boys and girls were giggling and looking at me behind my back. And I looked down and see, oh my gosh, they can actually see all of my genitals. And I crumpled to the floor. And so for me, showing off my penis and genitals was not about being affirmed so much as it was about me reversing what happened to me. So there was a very specific trauma that was behind that for me. Might not be the same for someone else.
Want to acknowledge this too. First of all, Drew, I'm sorry that that happened to you. That really sucks. Sounds like it was traumatic and like genuinely sorry for you on that. I want to say that if exhibitionism was a healthy way for you to reclaim that power, and you were doing it with consensual people, which I happen to know the dorm you were living in was a place where people were consensual about that for the most part, I would say that's not a bad thing. If that makes you kind of reclaim that power that you lost as a child, go for it. Again, I know that like in a bigger group setting, it's hard to establish consent, so maybe that wasn't the best place for it, but theoretically, if everybody consented, I think that would have been a really good way for you to work that out and to feel more in control of that experience. However, again, I'm not you, I'm not your therapist, I can't tell you that for sure, but I'm just putting my thoughts out here as much as you are.
And so as we talk about these symbols, just keep in mind that this is not a formula. This is not science, although I think there are scientific and physical aspects of this. Remember that every trigger tells a story, and our fantasies can make so much sense when we see the symbolism of specific types of porn or sexual imagery or stimulation that doesn't just feel attractive, but overwhelming or irresistible. And be
I feel like when he says overwhelmingly irresistible, the subtext is that you have to resist it. But I don't think that's the lesson you have to take from this. The lesson could be, I want to incorporate this into my life in a healthy and consensual way. I don't have to get rid of this. This symbol could be a healthy and normal part of my life that does not need to be minimized. I want to point that out because I feel like he says it, but doesn't really explicitly state the undertones.
Beginning to explore the symbolism behind your specific sexual arousal can help you get in touch with your deeper desires. And when you get aroused by that type of thing or person or activity or type of porn, you can translate in your head and say, oh, it's not about the sex. It's about the symbolism. It's about what that type of porn or what that type of person is promising to your heart.
You see, he doesn't say it. Do you see that? He says, when you feel this desire, you can translate it to this other thing that's not sex, which implicitly says that you should take this thing that is about sex and move it to something that's not about sex. I'm not saying that the sex and the not sex aren't connected. They are. But he's trying to say you need to move in the direction away from sex. But I don't necessarily think that's true. It could be that you realized that this sexual act is connected to this symbol, and so therefore by participating in this sexual act, you can feel gratified toward this symbol. That's also a possibility, and that is kind of left off the table by the way he puts things in order. Again, if you're concerned with some of your sexual desires or behaviors, talk to a therapist, work it out, find a healthy way to express yourself. But it does not have to be that you have to walk away from sex completely.
And man, when you can embrace your sexual desires for the meaning behind them and see the story behind them,
But
you
not
lose
for
a
the
lot of their
sex
power.
themselves.
I want to talk about two more sexual symbols. Number 6 is diapers. You might be able to guess this one pretty easily. Diapers often symbolize a return to childhood, maybe freedom from the responsibility and the pressure of adult life, or perhaps going back and getting what you needed but didn't have when you were really little, being taken care of, being attended to, having a loving, safe type of experience is often at the core of why diapers are significant. Or, it could be
Yeah. And if wearing a diaper on your own free time, in your own house, makes you feel safe and loved and cared for, again, as long as it's not interrupting your life or involving people who don't want to be involved, don't for a man. If that makes you feel safe, secure, makes you feel like you get to be a child again, exit from this adult hellscape, great. Enjoy it. Anything. Anything that helps you deal with that. As long as everybody involved is alright with it, and it's not interrupting your regular life. Who cares what you do in your free time?
a way of reversing or undoing what was done to you in diapers or what should have been done but wasn't done. Lastly, I want to talk about a fetish that has eluded me for many years and I still want to learn more about it. A foot fetish.
Wait, I'm gonna pause right here. I have heard the reason behind it, although I don't have a source either, so take it with a grain of salt. But I've heard it's that the neurons in the foot, like the sensory neurons from your foot that go to your brain, are like right next to the ones that are next to your genitals. And so because of that, there's a lot of miswiring. Let's see what he says. And also, fair enough, I don't have a source either. I should probably look that up. I will put in the description whether that was right or not based on my research.
It's one of the most common ones that you can often hear about. Feet contain so many nerve endings. That's why they can be so ticklish and sometimes bring a sexual excitement and charge. And yet sometimes there's a deeper story behind why feet have such a charge to them. In a video, which I'm linking in the description for this episode, I heard someone give a really moving explanation of how a foot fetish can develop. And this is just one storyline. When you're a kid crawling around on the floor, you see feet. And so for a little baby boy, having access to mom's feet means that she's in the room. She's here with me. She's close to me. I have love. I have attention. My needs are met here. And I think all sexual symbols at some level
Not expect that to be so wholesome, but that's kind of wholesome.
provide a promise of meeting a legitimate need in a symbolic way. There are so many sexual symbols. And you know what? I don't pretend to understand all of them. And I'm sure you can think of more, such as a hairy chest, or a big beard, or a beautiful smile, or blonde hair, or a
I don't think any of those so much are fetishes as they are preferences, but I guess this is a list of preferences and fetishes, so
specific skin color, or a specific age. I mean, all of these are not just pleasurable, they're powerful because of the meaning that we ascribe to them. The story that is being told in our head subconsciously, whether we realize it or not. Inside Husband Material Academy, we are going deep into making connections between our story and our sexuality every week. It's incredibly powerful. This is part of the
alright, I'm gonna cut it here because now it's just becoming an ad. But yeah, there's my reaction. Like I said, I feel like some of it was decently fair, decently understandable, but I feel like that underlying expectation to try to move away from the sexy part of the sexual symbol is just, that's still kind of purity culture, man. That's still trying to say that the sexy thing is bad, and you shouldn't worry about the sexy part of the sexy thing. You should look at the other parts. The other parts, excuse me, the other parts are God honoring. Be on the lookout for this, guys. It's still purity culture, even if it's given a new name and a whitewash of acceptance. Alright, this has been Heathen Freedom. I'm out.